we'll start off with the SEC. There's a lot of good schedules in the SEC. I think this one's fairly obvious. I think we talked about Kentucky and Arkansas being pretty decently hard schedules in their own right, and there's some other ones in there as well. Florida.
Yeah.
Right?
Again.
Florida.
Here we are again.
Last year, it was the toughest schedule in the country. This might be the toughest schedule in the country. I would definitely put it against these other schedules that we're going to talk about today in these other conferences. But yeah, this has to be one of, if not the hardest schedule in college football for a variety of reasons. Your out of conference and your in conference opponents are particularly tough.
Without a doubt. I think that's what we look for is the overall quality. That's what separated them, I thought, in my opinion. Not only do you have your Georgias and your Tennessees at Ole Miss, at LSU, at Texas A&M, some of the tougher, more talented teams in the SEC, but you also do throw in a couple of in-state rivals at Miami who whomped you last year in the Swamp. Obviously, who knows about Florida State this year? We're excited to talk more about them and what we think their chances are of competing, because they also have a pretty tough schedule as well later on in the summer. And then for good measure, Alex Golesh and South Florida, one of the more talented teams in, the AAC there. So that's no pushover either. I'm sure you'll be plenty, comfortable favorites, but that don't make it easy, especially when you are going 12 games, an 8-game SEC schedule. That's pretty tough. Your only, easy-ish game like we're talking about is Mississippi State and at Kentucky. But even those, are potentially the end of or after a couple of really tough games. And, in the SEC, you can get caught by just about anybody, especially if you don't have the depth, and injury luck to combat it. So poor Florida, man. Billy Napier, we talked about that a lot last offseason about it being a pretty important season and how the schedule did not help his favor at all, and especially with what they were trying to build there and the momentum he was gaining on the recruiting trail. And he got through, he did his thing. They overperformed last year, and they're looking to do the same this year as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be some knuckle draggers in the comments or just who watch this that are thinking in their head like, oh my gosh, Florida. Play a real team. What are you doing playing LIU week 1? Oh my gosh, what a garbage SEC schedule, whatever. See, let's do a little experiment right here. All right, I want you to do some math, okay? I'm going to add up 2 numbers, okay? I'm going to tell you to add up the numbers 0. What's 0 plus 8, Sadie?
8.
Cool. Now what's 3 plus 3?
6.
Cool. So would you say that a 0 and an 8, all right, happens to be more than just a 3 and a 3?
Without a doubt, yeah.
I hope I don't have to explain much further to our audience that this may describe some of these schedules that we're talking about today when you're talking about high-quality opponents. Sure, there are some tune-up games and pay-to-win games that you're going to see on some of these schedules today, but that's not completely indicative of the true nature and the true depth and toughness of these schedules. Like you said, I mean, Florida. You already mentioned all the teams, so I'm not going to name them too, but you got to go on the road to A&M. Like, that's a winnable game for you. You got spanked at home last year, right? Playing against them. You got to go on the road there. LSU, that's a winnable game, but you got to go on the road, right? So it's not even just like, oh my gosh, who you're playing, right? But fortunately, look, some of those easier games, like the Mississippi States, having that game at home, it's almost a waste because you believe that you're good enough to beat them on the road regardless. You would have liked to have that A&M game at home. Of course, the SEC schedules flip-flop from last year to this year, so didn't really control that going into this year. But point being, there are things even beyond Ole Miss on the road. There are things even beyond, right? Just the legitimacy of these opponents and they're out of conference. Schedule dynamic too does not necessarily look too pleasing to me either.
We saw Florida get pretty banged up last year, and part of that was because their schedule was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. And yeah, obviously you're also talking about like those people that come in and say, Long Island University, and getting mad at the SEC for playing cupcakes, getting mad at them for playing an 8-game schedule. But here's the reality. Like, you ask any single coach to trade their schedule with this schedule here, I couldn't find a single one in college football. I'd be damned if you would find one for me that would trade with Florida. This is ridiculous, and it is brutal.
Yeah, but I want to hear from you. Like, I thought Kentucky and Arkansas were particularly tough schedules. I thought that they have an argument. Like, you look at some of the opponents that they have, like Arkansas, they got to play Memphis and they got to play Notre Dame in their out of conference. Not to mention some tough in conference opponents as well. That's a pretty interesting schedule as well. Kentucky's interesting because they don't get to play themselves, right? But yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys on your thoughts on what are some of the toughest schedules in the SEC. But we happen to think the toughest is in Gainesville.